Welcome to the Retail Media Moguls podcast, brought to you by Platform 195. We share trends and strategies across retail media to help you accelerate your brand growth. I'm your host, Stuart Adamson. Welcome to the Retail Media Moguls podcast. I'm your host, Stuart Adamson, founder and CEO of Platform 195. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Evan Hovorka, the Vice President of Product and Innovation at Albertsons Media Collective. With over 17 years of experience at Target, Evan has played a pivotal role in driving innovation within retail media, having led diverse teams in developing award-winning products and strategies. At Albertsons, he continues to push the boundaries of retail media, focusing on creating value through advanced analytics, customer engagement, and innovative marketing solutions. Join us as we delve into Evan's insights on the evolving landscape of retail media, the capabilities of the Albertsons Retail Media Network, and the future of marketing in the retail sector. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Beautiful intro. I really appreciate that. Excited to connect today.
I thought you'd like that. Look, it's always good with these things because for you, if possible, is just to be able to give an overview of Albertsons itself, because we have quite an international listenership. Albertsons itself, and what is the scale of the Albertsons business? And then how does that then translate into the retail media world?
Absolutely. So Albertsons is a collection of grocers, pharmacies, fuel stations, and the like, such as the definition of most big American grocery stores is they're multifunctional. And it's also comprised of many banners that have been partnered with and acquired over the years. So we are 2,200 plus stores, about 1,700 pharmacies, 400 fuel stations, and they live under banners such as Safeway, Tom Thumb, United, Balducci's, Albertsons, and so on. And retaining the unique banner namesakes was a nod to like the community aspect of grocery and how connected communities feel to their local grocer. So there wasn't a strong desire to merge those into a central branding type of company. So we maintain that local and community feel within our grocers. And the managers of those stores and divisions are really geared towards finding the niche parts of their community and servicing them versus a national kind of approach. So while we certainly have national brands across all of those stores, each store is custom tuned to serve the needs of that community. Beyond that, Albertsons as a modern retailer, modern grocer, has adopted the retail media mentality. And we're several years in now to a very powerful and meaningful piece of the retail media story. We've been live in-house for 3.5 years. And prior to that, we used a third party to power a lot of our tech. We'll probably get into some of those details today. But yeah, that is the definition of Albertsons. We are locally great, nationally strong, and we really try to serve our customers through food and solutions and making their life easier.
So you've named it the Albertsons Media Collective. Are most of those shoppers effectively, are they in store? Have you got a huge online presence? How does that balance happen now?
Yeah, we do have a massive online shopping presence, and it's growing faster than the in-store. But the majority of our sales and experiences do happen in-store. Our 40 million plus loyalty members primarily convert in-store with a tremendous amount of browsing and list building, coupon clipping, recipe inspiration happening on the online side. And then our app is really the connection point between the two. So the app is obviously a representation of the digital site, but is used a lot in the store itself. So people can check in on their live lists, any other price points or coupons that they want to execute on live in that store. The app is serving both purposes.
Fantastic. Okay, let's dive into products a little bit. So what's the proposition? What are the sort of core media opportunities that you are bringing to the market?
Important to hit on the loyalty and identity piece. Knowing your listeners are a little more international, the pressures around identity preservation and targeting are very important. And I think the most important factor in determining an RM's value, retail media network's value and potential value, lives in how fresh is your identity data, how defensible is the data use cases. So did you acquire it with legal means in the jurisdictions that you live? And then how actionable are the products that you built on top of it? So how quick can you respond to a customer shift in behavior? How effective can the creative be on a social channel for that exact person? So before we get into the products, I'll just hit on, because it's grocery, the frequency of our shoppers is 2.6 times a week for our VIPs. So that tremendous amount of frequency allows us to have a very in-tune listening ear. When the marketing happens, we can start listening almost immediately for conversion, offline and online. And because the loyalty program is so well adopted and used in the vast majority of transactions, because that's when you get the price discounts and the loyalty credit, there's a high adoption of the loyalty program in every transaction. So we don't have to gross up for cash or unidentified transactions. They really all live in this identified world, which is fantastic. And because the frequency and the high fidelity of identity combine with a large number of people, now the products we build on top of it have a lot more scientific evidence of value. So I think that's an important thing to hit on, because a lot of the products I'm going to go through next are not generally unavailable through a traditional agency, but the data that they sit on is what makes them special. So we'll hit on that a bit. In chapter 1 of our retail media journey, this is fairly common for most retail media networks. It's a lot of on-site display. So taking advantage of that owned and operated property is going to have the highest margin. Of course, when you own Safeway.com or own the national retail brand.com, it's a big shift in business value because of the fact that you are the publisher, and a large amount of that margin comes back to the retailer. So on-site display, on-site spa or search is what we would call it, was journey number 1 or chapter number 1. Chapter number 2 was then leaving that nest and getting into the outside world, where we are maybe not owning the publisher relationship, but we're owning the data, the creative, and the execution. And so this opens up the opportunity for channels like social. So we're really big partners with Meta and Pinterest, leveraging them for inspirational recipe moments, expanding our weekly ad and flyer content, and targeting people where they're spending more of their time outside of Safeway.com, Albertsons.com. And then, of course, open web display, still a major piece of retail media, starting to get some pressure in terms of accuracy and scale, but still a big part of the US retail media scene is open web display. So we partner with companies like DV360 through Google or the Trade Desk as DSPs to access that inventory. There's a few other channels in there. I don't think we'll get too deep into today, like email, SMS. But chapter 3 really opens up the exciting layer of new products. And this is where we have connected TV, CTV for short, in-store. So while we have had a lot of in-store channels, they're now being harnessed into like a single solution. So think fuel screens, shelf talkers, in-store digital display screens. Digital out of home is the third one in that chapter 3, social influencer, and then more unique partnerships. So doing a connection with like Fetch, which is a large and growing US rewards program, being able to plug in unique ways that are maybe less typical of a media agency and more in tune with what a retailer could be doing with other retail enablers like Fetch.
And how do you go to market with them on a sales side? Are you using your whole new retail media sales team, or are you harnessing the buyers that you have within the organization? How do you get to market?
Yeah, we do have a very astute in-house sales team calling on the CPGs, the consumer packaged good brands that sell within our stores. And that relationship is based around generally the shopper budget of the CPG. So our in-house sales team is talking through a Halloween activation, new media to support maybe a new product launch that brand is focused on. That sales team represents the vast majority of the sales coming through, or the revenue coming through the program. But to your point, I think this is where you're headed, it's not a one size fits all. There are other ways to sell and partner. And sometimes that means we leverage a third party to help sell, like a Trade Desk or a Criteo can do some of the sales and sales enablement on our behalf because of the unique relationships that they represent. And then the biggest third part of that answer is the in-store merchants. They've got a massive relationship with the brands, the CPGs. And while they don't really support shopper funds in a traditional sense, they are huge players in how a brand and a retailer come together to solve problems. And so bringing them to the table, doing a joint effort, we call it a joint business plan, so that we're hitting all points of the relationship, the in-store inventory, price and promotion, end caps, all become part of the larger negotiation tactics that help us drive revenue and add value to the brands.
Fantastic. And obviously, there's been a huge explosion in retail media networks in the US, and in particular in CPG. How have you managed that with the education of the partners, and are they becoming a lot more sophisticated now in what they're demanding? How is that happening now?
That's right. Diversity in the CPG expectations is tough to manage for most retail media networks here in the United States. We've got really advanced partners like a Unilever, Pepsi, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola. I mean, these brands have been doing this for longer than I've been alive and have very high expectations on performance. But even beyond performance, you would expect that to be true. They even have very astute in-house teams that can do things on their own, or maybe they have a very advanced multi-touch attribution model. And so no matter how good a model could possibly be from Walmart or Target or Albertsons, Pepsi wants to use this one because that's the one their CMO is committed to. That's the one their agency uses. That's the one they're going to harness all of their retail media partnerships back into. And so hard to argue that that's not the right choice, but more difficult to then support when you've got all those diverse needs. It puts pressure on the product teams within the retail media networks to service all of those unique patterns in a way that makes sense and doesn't dilute our value with the brand. And then you've got long tail on the opposite end, who these folks are generally underserved in the retail media space because maybe their monthly budget is not quite at the level that it needs to be to get a big bombastic campaign on the website. But they have a lot of unique needs and values that can be serviced through things like self-serve or automating a lot of our capabilities in a way where the long tail and the agencies that represent long tail can take advantage of it. So it's a constant struggle to figure out where to put that next product investment and which customer and customer group to go service next. It's probably our biggest topic of conversation.
It's the classic challenge of the big partners versus the long tail and the scalability of the latter. Tell me a bit then about the technology. You talked about it being a sort of third, you're doing maybe, as in your words, chapter one, there was a lot of third party tech, but now you're bringing a lot of that in-house. Talk me through that a little bit. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I think there is retailers of a certain size, and I'm not expert enough to say exactly what that size is, but once you reach economies of scale, and there's probably 10 brands or 10 retailers in the US that definitely fall in this category, and then many, many others that fall into the other category and a couple that live in the bubble. But when you're large enough, let's pick on Albertsons, Target, Walmart, Kroger, there's definite value, immutable value in owning and controlling some of your tech stack, if not all of your tech stack. And while off-the-shelf products might make sense to service something like Meta, where you're never going to get full control of the creative experience or the ad serving experience, there's lots of areas where you can control it end to end. And that would be like in-store, in-app, on-site, email, SMS, the coupon experience. And while the goal is not necessarily control, it's really the value that can be extrapolated when you do control it, because now you can bring a layer of standardization, multi-channel optimization and orchestration, which adds value to the brands, the clients. It also allows you to start stitching together identity solutions that make more sense and can have more of an impact on multi-touch. When you have the same identity graph and the same delivery mechanisms, it's a lot easier to control some of the more important pieces of media performance. And then, if done correctly, it can change the margin game for the retail media network to be a more favorable investment track. And then that's where the bubble kicks in. At what point does owning your own XYZ technology bring more value than paying a third party to do it? You have to run a certain amount of media, have a certain amount of revenue coming in for that to make sense. And then you have to have a certain amount of engineering and in-house product prowess to maintain it and keep it fresh.
Yeah, and that doesn't normally sit within a retailer, right? Because they're retailers. So that's really exciting. So has that been a huge investment by the business to bring those developers in-house?
It's been a huge investment. And I know this is a big part of your history, going back to 2012 when you were bringing stuff in-house. It is a big investment, and the investment can be tempered when you have an enterprise partnership who's often doing a lot of the same things. The enterprise marketing team is also looking for social, display, CTV. And so there's some leverage to be had by bringing those two use cases together, grow the budget. But in general, yes, there has to be large commitment from, I'm going to say, the C-suite down, that we're committed to this retail media network. We're going to invest in the engineers and the product people and the PMOs necessary to maintain and build all that infrastructure. That also includes larger investments in privacy, legal teams, sourcing teams who have to go negotiate and maintain accuracy, all of those things. Versus the third party, you still have some of the needs there, but their experts have solved a lot of those problems. So yeah, big commitment, big ongoing conversations with C-level execs to maintain retail media prioritization.
Yeah, and actually, when you've got that C-level support, the world changes within a retailer, I think. Once they've understood the opportunity and they've seen that there's a huge 30%-ish of the profit of the group.
That usually gets you in the door to start the conversation. And then once you deliver on it, you can maintain that relationship. But we've been very fortunate at the Albertsons Media Collective to have super strong C-level support from the beginning.
Yeah. So which pieces of the tech are you looking at really building in-house? Is presumably you're not doing ad serving, it's going to be more CDP and that piece, or have I got that wrong?
This one is a little less textbook. The correct answer to that question is unique to every retailer. We have a very capable and strong in-house identity team and in-house app and site teams. So owning more of that conversation and that tech stack makes sense. But when it comes to something like on-site search, it's a big debate. Companies like Criteo versus building it with Kevel, Cody, others. It's a big debate now because you could put all that time and effort into negotiating better contracts, improving performance on the site for that search ad, and get more value out of that type of work versus flipping and building it yourself and now owning the entire end-to-end machine. That's a big debate that you see large retailers here in the US making, and a few of them have chosen to build, and a few are choosing to stay within the third party. Probably where we see it the most, though, yeah, you're right, CDP. I mean, DMP, CDP, those definitions are blurring a little bit, but owning more of our audience creation, audience distribution, that's helped quite a bit for a couple different reasons, like I mentioned, omnichannel. And then anything with in-store, putting a huge investment into in-store this year and owning as much of that as possible makes sense because that customer experience in our store is the most prized piece of our relationship and our value. So maintaining full control over that and safety over that is the top priority. So that's going to feel more in-house than third party.
Very cool. So let's talk about that in-store bit, because that's obviously huge for Albertsons. Whenever we go into work with retailers and they've got in stores, a large amount of stores, there's always a legacy set of screens and media. And there's always a desire to effectively connect all this stuff and deliver centrally campaigns into those screens. Where are you in that journey and how are you managing all of that?
That's a great question. There are certainly several legacy solutions that we're very fortunate to have. I think anyone in the retail media space would look at those numbers and capabilities and be very happy with those. But they're often siloed solutions. So we'll have a company that does the shelf tags, and we'll have a partnership on in-store, even printing floor stickers and store signage on the windows. I mean, doesn't sound super advanced, but still very effective. And then another third company could be doing fuel screens. That's a great place to start. Knowing you have the capability, the scale, understanding volume is a very nice data set to look at when deciding, oh, should I now take this part over, build this piece in-house? And that's the journey we've been on for the last year, is not always replacing, but changing the contract, changing the data flows to where, hey, we're going to keep the same XYZ screen or XYZ capability, but maybe we'll take over the sales and execution, or all the creative and ad serving are going to flow through a different system so that we can maintain that multi-channel control. And some of the vendors are very eager and excited to play in that space. Others we're still figuring out what the new contracts and partnerships can be. And then there's some channels that just need to get built from the ground up within the in-store tactics. So it is our biggest investment in resources, and I think our biggest potential return of all the channels we're still working on.
Amazing opportunity. So how far away are you, do you think, from being able to just program something centrally into one place and be able to distribute all of your multi-channel ad units from one sort of central hub?
Great question. I would say we are capable of that today. It's the amount of effort it takes to do it and maintain it. So if a VIP client came to us and said, we'll give you a large check and I expect perfect orchestration and multi-channel planning, we could do it. The challenge kicks in when it's the 30th customer or the 300th customer and the budgets are shrinking and they want that same level of control or multi-channel scale. Now our systems need to be upgraded and our processes need to be upgraded. So I would say we're probably less than halfway down that journey of perfecting it in terms of automation and always on AI-enabled optimization, but we know how to do it manually and semi-automatically. So that's helping us test and learn for a future Nirvana state. The other thing to say though, Stuart, is not every client wants everything that we sell. A lot of them, like I mentioned, those VIPs at the beginning, they can be super surgical. They may just want XYZ, or maybe they like this social platform, but not that one. And they'll be very prescriptive with their budgets. And so then we have to respond to that with somewhat of a siloed solution. Even if we think there would be some better way to plan those dollars, we have to honor their ask. And in some cases, those are getting very specific and very tight too.
And are you managing those partners in a managed service, or have they got a self-serve login and portal that they can buy through?
I would say the traditional path in the US has been one of starting with managed service, especially for companies who are heavy brick and mortar. Managed service makes a lot of sense. Part of that is driven by the fact that ownership over creative and appropriateness of ads, even within a category, there's a lot of heightened concern, and concern's the wrong word. There's a heightened sense of commitment to the shopper that when you're on a pet food page, you're not seeing ads for Nicorette gum. Or if you're in a organic, healthy food page, you're not seeing ads for something opposite of that. And when you open things up to like a generic ad server, the ability to control some of those things wanes. And so managed service is a good way to quickly avoid all of that. It's a little bit more of a payroll investment upfront, but it's a great way to preserve and build confidence within the merchants and the site and app teams and that C-suite that, hey, we're not here to hurt the customer relationship. In fact, we're here to make it better. Our whole goal is to enrich because we want those shoppers coming back as well. That's good for everybody within Albertsons. So managed services is the traditional starting path. And then we quickly run into, well, how do we scale for long tail, mid tail? How do we make brands who want to do it on their own happy? The self-serve journey begins there as well. And that's been a big part of my journey at Albertsons is building that self-serve capability. Trade Desk was our first major product, open web with autonomy around audience and measurement. And that's now expanded into several other channels, Spa and other partnerships. But I would say the brick and mortars are still playing catch up with the digital first in terms of true self-serve automation. When you look at even what a platform can do, like a Meta or a Google or an Amazon, they've got that self-serve model first, and you almost have zero options for managed service or managed service in very rare use cases where the budgets are massive.
So it's a really interesting journey, especially when you go back to what you said earlier around that long tail being much more about a joint business plan, and it becoming about pricing and all the things go into creating effective product sales. As you said, is to go into a self-serve platform, and actually a lot of those guys want their hand held and to know that actually they've got somebody at the end who's interested in helping them sell their products. But that's just an educational journey, really, isn't it? But they get the challenge. And then the other challenge is take up. You can create a self-service platform for 10,000 suppliers, but very often only 5% might actually use it. So then you've still got the problem that you haven't actually scaled, but you built something for the scale.
No, that's a good part of the equation too. If you're going to build that self-serve product, let's say it's an audience building capability, or maybe it's a clean room enabled measurement tool. Oftentimes, well, I'll speak for the mid-size and long tail. How many of them are capable and willing to then leave a trade desk to go to this other login and create that audience that's unique to them? If the retailer is representing 80% of their sales, no problem. If the retailer is one of 13 retail media networks representing that brand's sales, and one of them has this very advanced audience tool that you and I spent years creating, perfecting, and it is definitely the best audience creation tool, but it represents 1/13 of their sales. How motivated are they going to be to come log in and create this piece of the puzzle that only affects a small chunk or less than 10% of total value? There's that trade-off there. And so I think there's a twist on self-serve that needs to be acknowledged where we build it at the last endpoint on the journey. And so building self-serve into the social platform through like a clean room. And that's how I did it with Trade Desk is, hey, the folks are already logging in and spending their time within this platform. How autonomous and easy can I make my self-serve capabilities just live in that platform so that they don't need to find another login and do some 2 of the 15 steps in a separate platform. So making it easy to adopt has been a big part of our self-serve strategy.
So tell me about the external channels then. Obviously, you've always done social and programmatic display, but you mentioned connected TV, and there's obviously also digital out of home. What's happening there?
This has been a fun journey. My team's building out pilots and scaling productionalized versions of those 2 channels now. On the CTV side, and digital out of home too, it does open the conversation around identity and fidelity of IDs, because the conversation changes a little bit, unlike the channels we've talked about previously. With CTV, there's a big redaction of identity, and you're looking, in some cases, more around behavior and content alignment. And so how does it change the retail media's ability to measure and target in that case? Same with digital out of home. Not everything is a one-to-one targeted ad unit. You might have digital signage at a bus stop. There's still great ways to measure in a special manner, but it does take extra work to go build a new measurement model, build a new targeting strategy that is defensible for our sales teams in front of those clients. So that's been a big part of the early journey. Now that we're past that, we're spending a lot of time with the publishers who want to lean in and play nice with retail media. So companies like NBCU, YouTube, even Google's DV360 has come a long way to supporting retail media on CTV specifically. So that's where our first version of products has kicked in. For self-serve, we call it a DIY channel that lives entirely under the Trade Desk today, just because of the well-adopted self-serve capabilities there. But we're supporting CTV activation and digital out-of-home activation with audience measurement and some creative support. And then digital out of home in general will have a different feel for each company. But for us, we consider in-store to be in-store, even though it's a fuel screen or a signage. And digital out of home is something that lives outside of our ownership. So channel capabilities there look a little more of an extension of the social and display and search capabilities that we traditionally talked about. And we're figuring out the perfect way to bring that in and make it a part of the multi-channel experience that'll define the future state of retail media.
Amazing. So let's go into this challenging subject of measurement. Obviously, connected TV, top of the funnel, sponsored product listings, bottom of the funnel. How are you approaching measurement for partners? How demanding are they being? What are you doing there?
Yeah, we fortunately have a very capable measurement team. I'll hit on three things that make our measurement capabilities unique. One, we're very transparent with the methodology. Tying back to how we kicked off the conversation, we don't account for cash. We don't gross up for unidentified transactions. And so that helps the story kick off with a really scientific, favorable definition for our clients. It's what you see is what you get. And we can show them the methodology that builds a lot of trust. And it's traditionally the same methodology channel over channel. There are a few use cases like digital out of home where sometimes the identity story changes, but all the major channels that are live today follow a very similar pattern. That also leads to incrementality in most cases. So we can show scientifically that this investment on Stuart versus Evan had a measurable impact, not grossed up to a store level or grossed up to a cohort, but we as individuals changed our shopping patterns or didn't because of this advertising treatment. And for the big guys, I mean, they demand that in some cases, if not extremely appreciate it, because it's a challenging, diverse world of retail media. And so putting $10 into 5 different places and then saying which one did the best, but those 5 can't talk to each other is a very challenging environment for CPG. So when we add on things like transparency, not accounting for cash trans or grossing up, and then applying that incrementality metric on top, we do stand out as leaders in the measurement space. The second thing is standardization. This topic, I'm not sure how it is in the rest of the world. I'd love to hear your answer. But in the US, the standardization around measurement has been a hot vocal topic. And we're just now getting into it becoming a hot technical solution. And so the IAB has adopted, we helped build out the first framework for measurement standardization here in the United States. And now we're trying to deploy it in as many places as we can. I don't know if that changes the scientific accuracy of any one measurement methodology, but it brings consistency across the different retail media networks. So then at least you know you're measuring with the same stick. That stick might be 8% wrong, but at least you're applying it to all of the investment patterns, which I think is a huge step forward. We're big proponents of that. We'd love to see everyone adopt that. It doesn't have to be our methodology, but if we all knew which methodology to use, I think our CPG clients would be much happier. And then the third one is the adding on of new channels with new measurement capabilities and doing it in a way that minimizes inconsistencies and maximizes control and autonomy for the clients. So that can take shape in things like Cleanroom, where they can run some of their own measurement or insights, or enabling measurement on things like Trade Desk or Pinterest, where it's closed loop. Maybe it's on a path to incrementality, but the clients themselves can leverage the tools or their agencies can leverage the tools. So more around the automation of self-serve for those capabilities is what we're looking at next. Some of that is live, some of it's in design.
I mean, I think the standardization question, I think it's great. Ultimately, there's that media and delivery bit around how do we measure reach and clicks, impressions and brand lift and all those things, but then also conversion and sales and giving retailers their due when it comes to that brand lift piece is really important. And it's something that's always been a very passionate thing for me, is being able to demonstrate the value that a retailer has when it is selling solutions that go beyond just the conversion, that actually it gets the credit it deserves when it comes to building brand. I've always tell a funny story. When I first started at Thomas Cook, we used to get a big partner ring us up. I say a partner ring us up and say, I've got £20,000 for a campaign and I want to see a 10% uplift in product sales. And then they put the phone down, put the email down, and then go to the newspaper, one of the national newspapers, and offer them 200,000 for just reach. And it always used to annoy me because I was an old publisher, so I used to be on that newspaper side. But then to suddenly go back into that environment, I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I'm sitting on so much purchase intent data. This is the place to be. This people are here ready to purchase. But what we didn't have at that time were the consumer media opportunities. So all it was a case of really focusing on building that out. And that in turn led to a trading desk across Europe and that sort of thing. But it was the driver for me. was this completely unfair way that this media was being bought. But actually, the power of that data was sat in the middle. All you had to do was create those consumer options to match what those newspapers had or complement them.
And then maybe change the narrative around why you were selling. So even though you had the conversion data, that doesn't mean you're not also capable of doing brand building or awareness style campaigns. And the beauty of that, I think that's what you're saying by media opportunities, doing it through an activation channel that can also tie to conversion, even if the intent is awareness, is a beautiful machine if done correctly, because the conversion can still play a role and the awareness metrics can play a role on the low conversion tactics. I think it's a nice ecosystem to bring together. The one thing I would say to go beyond that, to add to your answer, we also have this tremendous merchant partnership, again, that has been around longer than I've been employed in this industry, where those merchants partner with a different part of the CPG, and they have tremendous knowledge and history around how price and promo and shelf space, even like SKU presentation on the shelf, how that impacts conversion, or regional inventory management across the different zip codes and states within the United States. They play major roles in how things are sold. Obviously, in stock and price, two of the biggest factors of sales. Those data metrics, I'm going to speak for the RMN industry as a whole, have not been incorporated in perfect ways into the retail media activation side. And when we do it here at The Collective, again, we can do it pretty consistently, but not perfectly automated. It has a big impact on the performance of the media. Huge surprise when things are in stock and properly priced, and the media then goes to complement that in the areas that it makes sense, the geolocated strategy on top of it. The performance is phenomenal. I'll go the other way then and say the agency side, the folks that you were just talking about doing reach and frequency at a massive scale, but maybe not as performance based. Those players, in our case, we have 5 major agencies in the US. We're working on partnering with them to then say, hey, if you're going to run that media, how can we help you tell a better story through conversion, new customers, brand loyalty, in a way that preserves our value, but recognizes that we're not going to run all media on behalf of a major CPG. We're lucky to get the chunk we get. And then when an agency is running it on their behalf, how do we partner with that agency in a way where they see enough value in our capabilities to share some of that revenue with us? I mean, that is true CPG nirvana when they can have autonomy and scale with the same metrics, standardized across all, and hitting the entire marketing funnel, if that still exists, from awareness to conversion in a way that's transparent. I think that's where we're headed with our vision. We'd love to see other RMNs follow suit.
Correct. And that's almost a great point to end on. I think we're almost out of time. I'm going to do one more question. So one of the things I do with my kids when they get home from school, because there always could be one-word answers when I ask them how school was, is I play a thing with them called Rose, Thorn, Bud. Rose is one thing that they was really good today. Thorn is one thing that was really not so good and could be better. And then Bud is something that they're looking forward to. So I want to play this with you, but with the retail media thing. So Rose is something that you guys are doing really well within Albertsons Media Collective. Thorn is something that you think, actually, we could do with really improving that area. And then Bud is what's next? What are you looking forward to? So should we start with Rose?
Yeah. Oh, man, this is a good question. The Rose piece for us, I think our CPG partnerships, primarily tied to innovation, is going really, really well. So in a lot of ad tech spaces, the expectation around, if you go to use a Google product or you buy that new Samsung phone, you open it up, there's a sense of perfection that's expected. And in retail media, at least in the US, not all the new channels have a very clean, logical path to perfection, especially when layered on top of the different CPG expectations. This one wants you to do everything for them with the white glove service. The next one wants you to do almost nothing, just support their agency or their self-serve, and then every version in the middle. So perfection is never expected out of the gate. And what that requires us from our CPG partnerships is some grace and some co-design, co-ownership of that innovation track. And they've responded in spades. Some of our best partners are chomping at the bit. They're hungry for that new innovation track, even though they know it's got some risk to it. This isn't going to perfectly scale out of the gate, but you can come join us on our alpha and beta versions of the product and help us quickly get to a much more perfected state. That's been such a beautiful acknowledgement of reality. Otherwise, we're more building in a bubble and dumping the final product out. So having that customer feedback has been really beautiful. I'm going to say the thorn, and I'll take ownership for this too, is that the relationship between the agency and the retail media network has been a little divisive. And it's more like, I grow when you lose and you grow when I lose. that's not a healthy mentality when we have the same customer. We're both here to make Pepsi's marketing budget shine as bright as possible. And so when we're in competition or actively not supporting each other's work, which is traditionally how the agency RMN relationship has unfolded, it doesn't do what we're hired to do. So I think we can do much better with clean rooms, with co-ownership of strategy and design without shifting the budgets much and make those CPGs much happier. And then what I'm looking forward to most, I think the full funnel, the full spectrum capabilities of a retail media network are going to look very beautiful when you've got a completely autonomous and perfected flow of merchant data, in-store data like the end caps and the shelf space, the price and promo. All of that plays into the media planning tools. And then maybe agencies on the other side of that and presenting a capability either managed or self that brings the power of those three worlds together. That would be what I'm shooting for with my role at Albertsons.
Yeah, there is Nirvana, as you state. That was wonderful. That's good. Thank you so much for doing that. And I think, unfortunately, that is the end of our time, Evan. It's been absolutely fascinating. It's gone so fast. I could probably talk to you for another hour, to be honest. But listen, thank you so much for gracing our Retail Media Moguls podcast. It's been really inspiring. I think it's amazing how you've got the in-store, the on-site, in-app, and now all of the external channels up the top of the funnel there. And really interesting to see how you're building all of that internal tech around data and identity. It's really, really interesting journey. I'd love to chat again in a year or so, see how far along you are then and see if we've hit that bud that you mentioned at the end there. But in the meantime, just to say thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, we look forward to talking to you again. Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.
The Retail Media Moguls podcast is brought to you by Platform 195. To learn more about Platform 195 and how to connect retail media with intelligent marketing to accelerate growth, visit platform195.com. And then make sure to search for Retail Media Moguls in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Platform 195, thanks for listening.